Hello everybody, this is Justin from Stillness in the Storm here. I'm going to post an update about the season of sacrifice. Now I'm recording this video on the 22nd of March, so this is a good time to post this video. And before I get into the content, I just want to thank all of my Patreon supporters who are supporting this, as well as anybody else who contributes to Stillness in the Storm. If it wasn't for viewer support in the form of cryptocurrency or PayPal donations or Patreon contributions, we couldn't do what we do here at Stillness. So I greatly appreciate and thank you for all your energy and the time that you spend researching and expanding your consciousness, because this is crucial for what we as a people are trying to do to improve the planet, in my opinion. So what is the season of sacrifice? I know it sounds like this really mysterious or potentially dark type of a thing, and quite frankly, it is a pretty dark thing. Now, I actually wrote an extensive article about this based off of the work of a man named Mark Passio. And Mark Passio is a former Satanist priest, and he spent time in the Church of Satan, Levian Church of Satan, I want to say in the mid to late 90s. And once he got into it, so to speak, and there's actually a breakdown of what this is, so I'm not going to get too into that here in this video, but once he got into it, he realized that his personal intentions for going into Satanism, which was more about rebelling against Roman Catholic upbringing and kind of being rebellious and things like this, and also just looking to gain an advantage in understanding, what he can do as an individual to improve himself, to gain like business advantages, things like that, things like this. He realized that it was way more dark than he actually thought. And at the time, he admits that he wasn't exactly the most moral person, but this is one of these beautiful exemplifications of what I call cosmic initiation is, which is the idea that in life you're doing the best you can. You may not necessarily have a firm grasp of what right or wrong even is necessarily, but you're moving forward, and then you do something, or you go through some experience that highlights a lot more about what the fundamental nature of reality is, and particularly what your purpose is. And for Mark, this is kind of what happened. He realized, because of his exposure to the darker side of the satanic organization, and even that statement kind of sounds crazy, but basically what that means is that his involvement in the Church of Satan, he thought it was just, a place for people to kind of learn about the satanic ideology, which is all about personal empowerment, and kind of, also it has a kind of social Darwinism aspect, so that, the strong prosper, and they have to prosper over the weak. And there are certainly other elements. I'm doing a very brief overview in this little short introduction here, but what he learned was that there was a much darker occult aspect to it. And to qualify or define what the term occult means, occult simply means hidden. So when we say occult, it doesn't necessarily mean evil. So what essentially he describes is the Church of Satan, Mark Passio. What he describes is that it's a kind of a front group or a recruiting mechanism for the darker aspects of the Cabal and the Illuminati. And what he learned was that these people that are in these organizations, he was attending meetings at night, and he met, doctors, lawyers, politicians, teachers, university professors that ran the gambit of social strata. And he realized that these people were severely into some really nasty things. And that kind of was a wake-up call for him to say, wait a minute, this is not, well, I'm not trying, yes, I'm trying to get a personal advantage. This is Mark speaking now. Yes, I'm trying to get a personal advantage and improve myself so I can better do the things I want in the world, but I'm not trying to enslave the population and do these horrible things to people. So what Mark discovered was, through his research later on, it took him about 10 years, I would say, to kind of do this deep hermit phase where he was researching and studying a great many things, and he developed his outward work, which can be found on whatonearthishappening.com. And this is where I found the information on the season of sacrifice. So what the season of sacrifice is, to get to the meat of this video, is it's a period of time beginning on around March 19th and ending on May 1st. And I say around because there's some debate in occult researchers as to when the exact date starts. But the basis of this, and this is laid beautifully in this article that I summarized all of the research that he did, and I also added my own research to it, was that as the sun rises out of the southern hemisphere, or the tomb, so to speak, of the earth, it begins that journey right around March 19th, and then it comes out completely on the 22nd. And then it makes its apex into the out of that area at around May 1st. And this time is incredibly important for the dark occultists, the Illuminati, the Cabal, who are responsible for a lot of these manipulation events that we see. This, what he calls chaos sorcery, and I think is a valid term. And what we're basically talking about here is false flags. So if you look at that window of time between March 19th and May 1st, you see that there's a preponderance of false flag attacks that took place in that time. Not all of them, but a great many. And what this time period is usually about is laying the foundations, or beginning to plant the seeds, right? Because this time of year is all about planting seeds for harvest. It's all about planting these seeds so that they can institute changes in policy. So when we say false flag, we don't necessarily mean that it's a totally manufactured event. What we mean is that it's either an event that was manufactured in some capacity, or an event that actually took place but is being used as a kind of a social manipulation tool. And that's what the media, as run by the Cabal, as run by the dark occult, is. It's the perception management, it's reality management. It takes events and it sculpts them into a narrative that can be used as a pretext to institute changes in policy. And because, from a natural law perspective, the legal system and the law system has to incorporate individuals, because technically their mandate, and this gets into some deeper aspects, their mandate as ecclesiastical authorities on the planet is to manage the evolution of consciousness of humanity as guided by natural law and cosmic law. But they don't do this truly. This is kind of like their way to sidestep this. And how they do that is they manipulate us through our perceptions, through the media, through these false flag events, so that we willingly want to participate in their dark occult agenda. And what's even more insidious is that because we are the ones that actually institute this dark occult agenda, they have less karmic backlash than we do. That doesn't to say that they don't have a karmic backlash, but because we are the ones who are agreeing to it, and when I say we, I mean in a general sense. It's actually, if you want to look specifically at this, it's more of the military and the police and the politicians and the people who are more directly involved in these type of events, and the institution of the policy that comes after that. But we, as participants in the global consciousness itself, of the human consciousness, when we see wrong, when we see things that are happening that are not in alignment with right and wrong, not in alignment with natural law, then if we let it happen, then we're consenting to it to some degree, and that's what we're here to do. So I would argue this notion that that is kind of popular in a lot of circles, that if we just ignore these things, if we just turn away and say, oh, well, I can't put my energy into them, or I'm going to be feeding energy into it, well, that's not really true. I mean, if you see something negative happening in front of you and you choose not to do something, then you're at least complicit in that process, if not taking a more direct role. And as a good example for that, imagine that you're in a supermarket and you see this really seedy character who's eyeing these children as you're walking through the supermarket. And then you also see that this man, or potentially woman, is walking up to a child and then takes them in front of you and then slowly starts to walk out of the supermarket. Well, if you have in your mind the idea that maybe this person isn't the parent, maybe this person is doing something really nefarious, and you kind of just have this idea, well, I don't want to pay energy into this. I'm not going to pay attention to it. I'm just going to kind of ignore it, and what will happen in a right sense will just happen on its own. Well, that's not necessarily the case. The reality is that these negative agendas require good people to do nothing. Now, with that said, as an individual, there's only so much we can do. So this is why I'm a firm supporter and I promote unity. And when I say unity, I don't necessarily mean, this blanket idea that we need to suppress our individuality. What I mean is that as individuals, we need to get our own house in order. We need to master our own consciousness, become more discerning, better researchers, capable of understanding information, and then work with our fellows who are willing to do this great work of making the world a better place, to actually institute programs and policies and projects in a strategic fashion that actually do make the world a better place. And part of that is countering these nefarious agendas like the season of sacrifice that I've just mentioned in this video. So just the fact that you're taking the time to pay attention to something that some people would label negative, educate yourself about it so that when the time comes, you can actually share good information with people who are willing to hear it, ideally in a compassionate way, then that's going to help dispel the mind control or the mind influence that comes from these dark occultists and the chaos sorcery that gets promoted through false flag agenda. So that's what the season of sacrifice is. Now, I'm going to include in the links of this video the detailed article I wrote about this. The season of sacrifice is called The False Flag Season is About to Begin. And I strongly encourage you read that. It's a dense document. There's a lot of information in there. So take your time with it and educate yourself. I can't emphasize that enough. Having a coherent, intrinsic understanding of these topics is going to help you when you're in these organic moments in your life to slowly start to drip the truth into the minds of your fellows. And ultimately, that's what I would argue a big fundamental aspect of the great work is all about. And the great work is just simply the personal act that we take in making the world a better place. So the more that we can invest ourselves as individuals into this work, muster our motivation, work with our fellows to support each other and help motivate each other and enhance the knowledge that we have to offer to people, the more we're going to start to counter these dark agendas. And ultimately, that's what it's all about. That's what we're here to do, I would argue. So I greatly appreciate the time that you took to learn about these things. Definitely check out stillnessinthestorm.com. You can also check us out on Twitter. And I greatly appreciate the support of our Patreons. Without the support of Patreons and other support that we get from our readers, we couldn't do the work that we do here. So stay conscious, stay vigilant, seek the truth, and share it with compassion. Much love, and take care.